Hey guys, Al here. Happy Monday. Wanted to do a video. I've talked a lot about it, but I do think it's important. Exclusion fences. So as you can see behind me, this is a brand new field. This is about worst case scenario. So you have brand new field, literally a dozer pulled off that field, I want to say 3 weeks after logging operation. So we cleared 6 acres, sold 6 acres of pines. So it was old, mature, 35, 40-year-old red pines. The back 3 acres, give or take, is all going to be focused on creating oak regeneration for the next 40, 50 years. And then the front is a nice food plot. This field had a 4.8 pH. Base saturation's way out of whack. I think the calcium was like 40%. Organic matter was okay. But other than that, I mean, it was just basically a dead field. The dozer had just pulled out of there a couple weeks before I was in there on the tractor with the drill. So I know my farm. I've been managing it for a long time. We know that we have high deer densities. At least relatively speaking for our area. There's zero agriculture around. It's primarily close canopy forest or big, huge clear cuts, which are great from a deer browse bowl perspective, but they're also really hard to hunt. So what ends up happening is you get this massive increase in deer population over a few years after a big clear cut because the habitat's so good, the fawn recruitment is so good, the deer weights tend to be really good because they have it's basically like a however many acres, say it's a 100-acre clear cut, right? It's like a 100-acre food plot for the deer. So we have all of these things happening within our neighborhood. So when we planted this, we knew that, one, we got a little bit of lime down, but it wasn't enough time to even really have any benefit. So we did a little bit of lime at the time of planting, drilled right in, and prayed for rain. We got a bunch of rain right off the bat, which was awesome. Actually, so much rain that if I didn't no-till drill this, it would have been washing away. But luckily, as you can see, we did get some good growth of our grains and our brassicas and everything in our carbon load. But what ended up happening in this field was that the deer just absolutely annihilated it. Now, I share all of that background because of this new field, because I know that the pH was low, because I know that it's on a ridgetop and we got a bunch of rain and then it was a drought. It would have been very easy for me to assume this was a soil fertility issue. However, because of that little piece, all the money and time on fuel and seed, and guys spend money, some guys on fertilizer and all these other soil tests, etc. And one of the most important things we can do, all of that's really important. But one of the most important things we can do is have that exclusion fence so we understand deer browse pressure. So I want to see, this is another field on the same farm. So this particular field is, I don't know, maybe a mile from that location. But this field's been in the program for a few years. And as you can see, the tonnage that it's producing, and these were taken around, I think they were the same day, but around the same general time. And you can see the amount of food, both in tuber production, grain production, everything that's being produced on this field versus that first one. Now, the soil tests are different. This has a pH of around 6. The soil fertility is producing, it's about the same size. They're both about 3-acre fields. The deer densities, obviously, it's the same farm. So the deer densities vary a little bit. We do tend to have a little bit more does, it seems like, on the southern end of the farm, and this is more on the northern end. But relatively speaking, this is all about the same. So what we've been able to do, though, is same time of planting everything. But because this field has been in a system that's focusing on nutrient cycling, we call it a vitalized seed, our 1-2 system. But there was, the pH is correct, and there was enough food on this side of the farm that we were able to get on top of the biomass creation. So why is this important? Well, here's a video I took. It's hard to see. It's a pretty nice 3-year-old 8-point that I videoed in this field because I was trying to shoot some does. And this is the one that I was talking about in the very beginning of the video. And I had highlighted in there that that the deer were still eating in that field, even though it was browsed very heavily, as you can see from that exclusion fence. Obviously, cameras helped us to understand the number of deer that were coming in there from a hunting perspective. But this is important information, because what can I do to help to mitigate this risk going forward so that we get more encounters like this one with does and nice bugs? And there's also more groceries and biomass, so we're going to help the soil. So how am I going to do that? Well, number one, we're going to continue to doe harvest. As you can see here, this was second day of rifle or shotgun season in Ohio. We'd also shot a few with our bows. So we're going to continue to focus on doe harvest to reduce the number of miles on the farm so that we can maximize the production on all the fields, not just on certain fields across the farm. As you can see in this picture, we still have a lot of deer on the farm. This is obviously just, cameras, I always like to say, they tell about 30% of the story. But we're going to continue to plant large fields for destination feeding to reduce some of the pressure on some of the larger fields, as you see here. So we're going to continue to shoot does, plant more food, and in our case, we're going to do both. Here's just another quick example of why diversity is so important. In this particular picture, this was almost in December. I think it was like 11/25 was the picture. I just looked at it. I forgot, 11/24 maybe. So almost into December, and here you have deer still feeding on our carbon load. Because it's so diverse, and obviously this is a nice sized field, but it's just continuing to give those deer food. That deer looks like it's chewing on a radish. But there's also still so many grains and clovers and other things in there that every time you get a warm spell, it's going to jump up. And that's why that first field that I talked about is able to still feed deer, because if it was just monoculture, it would have been ate to the ground. Because it's so diverse, those deer, like that 3-year-old I showed you, are continuing to go back there and feed on those grains that are greening up, which are not only feeding deer, but remember, every time that plant's growing, photosynthesis is happening, and it's feeding that soil biology. So to wrap this up, how am I going to take this field and make it look like some of the other ones? Well, every field has a little bit different prescription. This particular field, as I mentioned, we shot does on the farm. In general, it needed it, both for native browse regeneration as well as food plot supplemental food for the deer and for our soils. Number two, I'm going to be continuing to increase the amount of plantable food on the farm. One of our challenges is flat enough ground to do so, but we're going to find some unique ways to do that through broadcasting on some steeper terrain, making sure all of our logging trails are planted, and then, of course, on our big destination fields using the Vitalized 1-2 system. And then lastly, increasing seeding rates. So that's something that's really important, guys. Every single farm is different. Of course, every seed company out there is going to give you general recommendations for seeding rates. But that is very dependent on your soil fertility, on your densities, etc. So for me, when I plant this with the Nitro Boost, which this will be the first time this field's ever had that Nitro Boost, which I'm really excited about, I'm going to up the seeding rate. One, you're going to have a lot to eat during the spring and summer anyways, but they're going to love that Nitro Boost. There's beans in there, there's peas in there, there's sun hemp in there, etc. So they're going to want to be in there too. So I'm going to up that seeding rate on this particular field. Probably, let's say I plant the rest of the farm at 50 or 55 pounds to the acre. I might even go 65, an extra 10 pounds on this particular field because I know my farm and I know my prescription. I'm also going to be using our seed feed product. I use that on all of our fields now, but I will certainly be using that in our seed armor to ensure that there's plenty of nutrients right on that seed in the furrow with the no-till drill. Obviously, you can do that with a broadcast spreader as well. And then I'll be following up on this field with foliar treatments to ensure we're creating as much biomass as possible. And lastly, I'm going to be praying for rain. So hopefully this is useful, guys. I really enjoyed putting this. Importantly, if you get outside, enjoy the time outdoors, enjoy the time with your family, and be safe. And if you like this type of stuff, guys, please share, follow, subscribe. Check us out, vitalizedseed.com. We sure do appreciate you.